Okay, can you focus on this? Number one, with male makeup, I think you don't want to use any pretty colors. And if you can see from all these colors, they're kind of earth tones. So you don't have any greens, any pinks, any reds, any blues. Basically, you're dealing with a palette of browns. Even with highlight, which we'll talk about, you want to use something that's like cream colored or banana colored, not an exact white. You also, for a male, don't want to get any makeup that has sparkle in it, especially if you're buying from CVS or something like that. They have these kinds of makeups that have like a sparkle or a sheen. You don't want to do that. Number one, it looks like makeup, and it can also look like sweat from a distance. I think when you're starting to do makeup, powders are easier than grease paint. Grease paint in general, when you sweat, it can run, and also it can be harder to control. Whereas powders, you can sort of dab. I'll show you in a moment. But if I was, to use this, you can dab it and kind of make the shape that you want by touching the brush lightly. Whereas with grease paint, you kind of have to literally paint it on, and then it's easier to make a mistake. So usually I suggest for beginning people in makeup to focus on powders. It's an easier way to go. So the first thing you always want to do is a base. You want to try to match the base color to your own skin, maybe one shade darker. So all of you have different kinds of skin, but it's basically like priming a canvas for painting. Can you scoot a little closer? Usually I use some kind of liquid or soft base. There's lots of different good bases you can use. Everything I'm using here is CVS, and I did that intentionally because when you're starting, that's a cheaper makeup to buy. But like everything else, if more expensive makeup is better. So if you get a Ben Nye or there's theatrical makeup, it's a lot more expensive, but it goes on a lot easier and it stays longer, and it is actually better. But you can start by just learning with the CVS stuff, the Maybelline, L'Oreal, all that, and then slowly upgrade. The first thing you should upgrade to is brushes. Has anybody ever painted with your parents? Okay. You'll notice if you go to Home Depot, close your lips. I never put base on the lips because I don't like to use lipstick. So if you just keep the natural lip color, that's better. So it's always good to cover your lips when you're putting the base on, right? You can spend more time on this. The other thing is you always want to do some of your neck. If you just do your face will pop off of your body. So whatever color, you want to pull that down into your neck at least a little, okay? And you can, if you're doing something shirtless, you can bring it all the way down. Okay. So the idea with the base is that we're making everything blank, and you're basically covering all your blemishes and zips and all that. I always like, whenever I use any kind of base, to set it with powder. I feel like, again, it keeps, when you start sweating, when it's set with powder, the sweat will go on the other side of this and won't run the makeup. If you were to start sweating now, you might see the sweat coming it might sweat the makeup right off. When you put the powder on, it actually sets it, and then what you'll see is the sweat will go on top of the powder, and it holds everything on the body better.
So does a powder-based foundation do the same thing?
Not to the same extent. I find that, yes, there's all different kinds of foundations, and there are some that are like a dry powder base. I find that using a liquid or a oil-based foundation and then setting it with powder works the best for boys on stage because of the sweat factor, okay? So that's basically step one. Cut. Step two, and I know there's powder all over this place, is to contour yourself. So basically when you do contour, you want to think of the face as a skull. Can you face a little bit this way? So with a skull, you have your eye sockets, you're gonna have your cheekbone here, there's a little bit of an indentation in your temple. So basically you're trying to accentuate the bone structure, all right? I'm gonna start with the hardest thing, which is the cheek. The big mistake people make, turn your head this way, with cheeks, is they start here and then they draw down. The reality is your cheekbone is straighter this way than you think. So when you do contour on the cheek, you wanna go from the middle of the ear towards the nose, not the middle of the ear down to the mouth, okay? So this is not correct. This is gonna be correct. And you don't have to go very far. So I'll just pick a brown. The other thing is when you're using powder, you do this, and you have to kind of knock it on your hand or something else, because sometimes you can have like a big clump, and then that could. And then again, I'm not gonna draw a line. I'm gonna dab. I'm gonna go bup, 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 bup. See how I'm like dabbing it? Starting here, and I just slowly pull it towards the center of his face, right underneath the cheekbone. So there's his cheekbone, and I'm going right underneath that. Okay? And then I can then do the other side. And notice with this, I'm not going that far. Maybe an inch or two. This way. But once again, it's straighter than you think. This way. And already you can start to see, can you face your friends? You know, you start to see the contour here, right? We're starting to create. And I'm gonna do a little bit at the temple. Same thing. And then you can do under the jaw. When you go under the jaw, you'd never wanna go all the way to the ear, because once again, that'll separate your face from your body. So you wanna go, do you see how your jaw has always, it goes this way and it goes that way? You wanna take it to that point. You don't wanna draw that part in. So I'm gonna start there, and again, dab this way. And again, part of it is to, you know, I'm strengthening the jawline a little bit. I mean, you can see, look at this side, and then look at this side without. And then the other part is that the colors you have on your face, you want them in different parts of your face. Because if you just, for instance, had this only here and nowhere else, it'd be like, well, he's got blush on, or he's got, but when you start putting it around the face in different areas, then it looks like it's all part of, it looks like you're just, it doesn't look like makeup anymore. Oh, sorry. Ugh. And then if you want, you can put a little bit on the chin. He has darker hair. For those of you who are more blonde, I would also say you can put it up into the hairline like this, and really right up into the hair. So it's not separate, but like you're delineating the bottom under the jaw, then you're also delineating the top of the head this way.
How more blonde do we want to be if we're going to do that?
I mean, you can experiment, but you'll see. What this does when you're blonde is that it creates a stronger hairline. Well, even for him, you can see it's already creating a stronger hairline, even with brown hair, right? If you have black hair, you don't have to do that so much. But the other thing that's nice about this is, once again, you're starting to see a palette of color. So then, again, even if it doesn't change the hairline, then I see sort of the same palette of color around the face. So it starts to look more natural. It looks less like makeup, okay? So I use a tight brush for that, something small. And then for the blush, I'll use something bigger and softer. And then this, you can just put right on top. So it's like, even though it's on top, even though it's ultimately gonna be seen on top, like you will see the blush here, but I'll put it on top of the whole thing to help blend it. Because once again, you don't really want lines on your face, you just want. So I'm just putting this exactly on top of the other. And again, you can see from the color, it's not a strong color. With this one, I can pull it down into the neck a little. Like that. always with the cheeks, it's the strongest towards the outside. So you don't want to put like cheeks here. You want the strength, because that's the furthest out part of the bone, right? So you want to emphasize this part of the bone, not that part of the cheek. So you don't want to do that, right? You want to do this over here. Okay. So now in a situation like this, you know, it depends on the shape of your face. Let's say this is getting a little wide. Okay, so now I can clean it up with some of that creamy off-white, and then you can put that on top of the red, and on the draw. So this is going right on the top of the bone. And it also helps clean the lines. So I intentionally did this a little bit messy, so now I can clean it up. I can use the white. And that's what's nice about powders, is when you make mistakes, you can just sort of go over, right? And even if you made a big mistake, like let's say I made a big mistake, you can go and take your base and clean it up. You know, let's say I wanted to make this a little sharper, or I went too far in, right? So I can just go ahead and go right over it again with the base, and layer it over, clean up the line that I want, and I can go and use some of my powder to powder it. That's why I think, you know, when you're working with powders, you see how you can fix a mistake, which is also why you want to leave time, so you do time to do your makeup. Okay, that's basically part 2.